Check me out. I want to say this before the video come on. It's just satire. There's nothing real, nothing political about it. There's nothing, none of that. It's just me showing my literary skills. See, everything that Biden is saying in this is it's the AI program that has its face and manipulate. But all of the words that Biden is saying are written by me, and I'm just showing you a little bit of my literary skills and whatnot. I don't curse all the time, so if you're interested, here you go. Have a listen.
The government's process of total domination that you thought was impossible without another civil war, which is just smoke and mirrors, a culmination of every CIA and FBI experiment. More so the CIA, which was created long after J. Edgar Hoover's tenure at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Hoover knew that to encompass the spirit of the American people. He knew that his message would have to encompass the American people's spirit, and what might have that been? Christianity, and with Christianity he was able to demonize everything that went against Christian morality. J. Edgar Hoover should go down in history as the most manipulative dictator of all time. Why I compare J. Edgar Hoover to a dictator, this reason alone. Never in history of the United States government's inception has one man held in office with total authority outside or inside a legislative branch, which equates to ruling your own little private country within a country outside of all laws and post on the country's citizens, with not one shot being fired. Information was J. Edgar Hoover's ace in the hole, and we all feel the government having all access to your private information. But the government is not the ones you should be in fear of. He who holds the information has the power. In this age of technology, Mark Zuckerberg is the new J. Edgar Hoover on steroids. It took J. Edgar Hoover an army of agents across the United States, millions in federal tax dollars. And to this day, law enforcement still needs a warrant signed by a judge to tap your phone, enter your home, search you or your car without probable cause. But yet you voluntarily confess your admissions of guilt on live streams, information you would clearly decline to offer to law enforcement. J. Edgar Hoover was a big learning lesson that one man should never have the power to yield over so many. And the other important aspect that they learn is to use fear to control the masses. Since then until now, fear has been used to control the American masses. Without fear, there is no control. George Bush opens up a can of worms with the Patriot Act, which prior to only gave access to sensitive information to those with proper clearance. The internet gave rise to a new way of gathering information. Remember Napster, it was illegal to share copywritten information with the intent to defraud. Now it's such commonplace because we now deal with a beast of our own creation. That runs rampant, a world that exists yet at the same time doesn't exist, under the total control of the one Mark Zuckerberg, through terms of service, has gotten people to divulge every aspect of everyday life. We, as the government, may have only known your name and address. Mark Zuckerberg knows the name of your newborn from conception, in control of the biggest propaganda machine that Adolf Hitler could have only imagined. No longer is it the government you should be worried about. Not even those who designed the plans of how the New World Order would be ushered in were prepared for how this new psychological war machine called the internet, which took most of the control out of the hands of Congress. Because Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk can rewrite all the rules, because their worlds is not governed by the Constitution, where you have the right to privacy. Corporate entities are allowed the right under the Constitution, as long as it's not under the rest or promise of any monetary compensation. They have every right to ask you to give up every right allotted to you under the United States Constitution, commonly known to the masses as a terms of service agreement, which is simply a screw you pay me situation. The world has gone digital. The ways of analog is no longer in existence. The technology given to the U.S. government by other worldly beings underneath the Treaty of Extraterrestrials that came to agreement under the Eisenhower administration in trade for technology. They were allowed to abduct human beings for extraterrestrial experiments. And the technology that they gave were mere trinkets of which we were supposed to reveal to humankind and intervals to give the illusion of advancement on behalf of their government. Another way of saying, we got you, don't worry about it. A smokescreen that gives people a level of comfortability, never factoring in that our message of be all that you can be will really resonate with some children, and they will eventually become better than we expected. As Zuckerberg and Elon, somewhere along the line, the government lost control of the beast. It only listens to commands from Mark and Elon. Elon is not as much of a threat, but he has been warned to keep his SpaceX program clear of the moon and keep your rockets pointed toward colonizing Mars. There are many things that may be exposed on the moon. Finding Jimmy Hoffa on the dark side of the moon would cause a real shitstorm. But Mark, he's a whole different animal. For here we have Mr. Zuckerberg. He has diverted a system of democracy and commerce and has brought about a shift in the paradox of how things have been done since the Mayflower collided with Plymouth Rock. Not only does he decide what you see, but he also determines what you can say, all the while using one of the most powerful psychological tricks in the book, The Asch Method of Conformity. We have a struggling economy due to the fact Mr. Zuckerberg will have you take real money and transfer it into metabucks. Once transferred into metacurrency, there is no way of redeeming it to make use of it in the actual world. It is the government's fear that soon he will possess enough money to bankrupt the Federal Reserves, while still implementing the subtle feelings of fear. Mr. Zuckerberg began building a bomb shelter to mentally solidify the illusion that he knows more than he actually may. But let me assure you that Mr. Zuckerberg has no access to any launch codes. But what he does have is uninhibited access to your mind. How many of you remember the Bruce Willis movie? How many of you are familiar with the Oculus Quest? Well, that reality is the same one that Bruce was living in the movie, no different from the one that you're living in now. And Mr. Zuckerberg is the ringmaster. He is using your conscious dream state to fulfill all of your wants and desires, giving you an escape from your mundane life. See, you may, in reality, live in a shack. But in the world that Mr. Zuckerberg has created for you, you can afford a mansion for now. But when this universe becomes the norm, you can shop, you can party all from the comforts of home, until one day there is a system update and a new terms of service. We will now be using real-world credit scores in the metaverse. Now begins the segregation of class in the metaverse. A surefly way to keep the metacrime down to a minimum. But why should you believe your government? We have been feeding you horse shit since Roswell. Good night. This is Joe Biden, my Pink Elephant podcast, State of the Union address. Good night, and God bless.
Oh, you see this guy? See this guy? Number one bullshit guy.
This man is anyways.